All right, we're going to start off on time. Thank you everyone for being here. What a great opportunity to celebrate all of the history of our department. I'm not sure if we've had in the same room 4 generations of chairs. Thank you for all of you for being here. What that means is that pretty much everyone here has been impacted by your vision, the work for our department, your efforts, and we're grateful for that. We're celebrating today this beautiful gift. We're starting the Matsumoto lectureship series. This is going to be an annual lectureship in honor of the Matsumoto Endowed and funded by their endowment. We have a special guest, Dr. Michael Dake. Thank you so much for making it all the way here and being with us. So just a brief introduction to our endowment. So the gift account was established in 2024. This was Alan said Julie's vision for our department to have funds that can support innovation, clinical programs, education for both residency programs, but as well imaging services. So the description of the account is wide and broad enough that we can really support many parts of our mission that are being threatened by tight budgets right now. So that really is a gift to our future. I think that having those funds be gifted to us and available for many things that we can continue doing is it's a great way to give provide some legacy to all of us. The endowment started getting revenues last year. And we quickly moved to think, what are things that we can start supporting right now? Of course, this is a very young endowment, so there's so much that we can think of and support. We're funding this, of course, this lectureship series, one annual speaker to commemorate the history of our department and really to honor who we are as a department. We're able to keep a really important part of our mission, which is educating students. So from this endowment, we're funding the Medical Student Summer Research Program. This funds approximately 20 students per year doing research with us. It's a great platform for all of us to be able to engage them. And I think one of the most significant part of that, part of the support is the money that is dedicated to the support of health relief. This is part of our mission to extend services to our communities and close that gap in disparity. So thanks to all of them who advocated for that made it possible. When Alan was stepping down as the chair and we were welcoming Dr. Dane in 2024, we also wanted to thank our residency leaders. Our residency programs are the jewel of this department, and their work behind the scenes is huge. So we were able to support 9 residents to travel to RSNA and really be there with Alan as he was stepping down, enjoying the meeting, and again, creating some network that were important. So with this, I want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you to Julian. This is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you. And when I was starting to prepare this first inaugural lecture, I was asking Alan, who do you think you would want to open this series? And he said, well, if you want someone special for me, that would be Michael Dake, but it's really hard to get. So I reached out, and then Dr. Dake the next day replied, if there's anyone that I would follow for, and it would be easy to pay tribute to is so please happen. So thank you both. And of course, I wasn't here when Dr. Dake was a chair, but I've been asking my colleagues, and some of them were trainees when he was chair. And I was asking them, how was he? What was the, tell me a lot. And these are some of the things that I heard. So they described him as a visionary, a polymath, a joyful person, someone larger than life. And when I said, what was your vision? What was his vision for our department? They said, the sky is so. So I think that speaks to where we are right now, the opportunities that you were able to give us and the platform that you set up for to be successful. And after that, all the generations of chairs that we have. So thank you and welcome to this series. Since I wasn't here when you were a chair, I'm going to ask Dr. Fritz Engel, his colleague and friend, to introduce Dr. Dake. They're the same. You can just continue the presentation. Sorry, I merged them forward. Yeah. Just project that. Just project.
Okay. Well, I am honored to be making an introduction here of Dr. Michael Dake, who some of you know, has been here for a long time, and I'm so honored to be able to introduce the rest of you. I am somewhat reluctant. His CV is so huge, one could never give it adequate justice. And I also hate to be the one standing between you and actually getting to hear him talk, because I think anyone who's ever heard him talk would say he's one of the best medical lecturers anywhere in any specialty. So the story I have to tell you, though, is going to take a few minutes. It starts with Marshal Crawley P. Dake, who was a Union Civil War officer, and was assigned to the Arizona territories at the time of frequent stagecoach robberies in the area of Tombstone. Dake was noted for his creativity, including his frequent deputization of civilian posses using the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. And he was a key figure in the Arizona Territory who trusted Virgil Earp and his brother to help resolve the ongoing problems with the cowboy gang. So it's in his genes. And the creativity is there, the aggressiveness, the creativeness, all stretches back about 5 generations. Of course, Virgil Earp's posse, along with Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, had a major shootout at OK Corral with the cowboy gang in October 26, 81. It may not have been the best publicity for Marshal Dake, but did make a lot of great books and movies later on. Donald A. Dake was a teacher and ultimately administrator and superintendent of the South Bend Regional School System in 1969, which was a very challenging time. The school system was having protests, there's desegregation going on, but he was noted to be in accomplishing the task without taking any confrontational approaches and getting things done. Again, which is a trait we see that today. He was a long-term supporter of the arts in South Bend, formed a local arts council, which you'll see also a passion for Dr. Dake's. Of course, he and his wife, Mary Jane, who was also a teacher, had a son, Michael. So he grew up in South Bend, Indiana, went to Jackson High School, class of 1969. A lot of activities, booster club, played basketball, played football, played tennis, French club, National Honor Society, student council. You get the gist of it. And on top of all that was all-state in basketball. Graduated from Harvard in 73 with a bachelor's of science. There he is, the 45th reunion. At Harvard, he was well known in the student body as one of the editors of the Crimson Sports Section, which is a very prestigious, long-standing school newspaper. And I took this little snippet out, which I just have to take a couple of minutes to read this. Sure, this is not all the 5'11", 170-pound junior's fault. As any follower of local football talent will tell you, he has not been blessed with an overabundance of experience or depth. In fact, when Coach Naveau started out on Nickerson Field this August for the opening fall workout, he was able to greet only 70 bodies, some of them not even warm. So glad to know he had a good sense of humor, implementing his college days. So Real Aldridge was the president of ABC Sports from 1968 to 1986. And I wouldn't expect any of you to know him, but he invented the concept of instant replay, which of course we couldn't live without now, brought Olympic sports coverage to a new level, and created both worldwide sports and Monday Night Football programs. So just a huge figure in broadcasting in the late 60s. While Mike was a writer for the sports section of the Harvard Crimson, Real Aldridge actually came and visited Mike in his dorm, talked about coming and working for him. Mike offered him a job. Unfortunately for all of us, Mike turned it down. He remains, though, a very avid sports enthusiast. And to listen to him and Alan chat about sports, their encyclopedic knowledge in almost every sport you can imagine is just astounding. Here he is, of course, Alan, his daughter Julie, soon to be faculty with us, Manash Kaja and Sahar Sabri, two former trainees and faculty with us, and of course the big game, the Final Four in 2019. I went to Baylor College of Medicine, graduated in '78. First in internal medicine, I was the chief resident graduating in 1982. Got a pulmonary fellowship at UCSF and graduated in 1983. But then saw the light, switched to radiology, and was a radiology resident at UCSF. He was awarded the Elmer Ning Award for Outstanding Resident Diagnostic Radiology in '86. Did his fellowship there in '86, '87, and worked for 2 years at San Francisco General Hospital UCSF faculty before moving to Miami, which many of you may not know. He joined Dr. Barry Katzen, who's a big figure in the IR world, joined the Miami Vascular Institute, where Dr. Katzen was already known as a bit of a maverick. He did these live broadcasts and took on an aggressive stance in providing new procedures and new devices were being introduced all the time. Other early faculty at MVI at that time was Dr. Gary Becker, who of course became the executive director of the EPR eventually. So, but back to California in 1990 as a section chief of cardiovascular interventional radiology. So here he is, just a few years out of his fellowship, he's already section chief. He built a world-renowned team of IR physicians there. He established venous thrombolysis thrombectomy and iliac vein recanalization as effective procedures, which is a very common procedure that few people remember that he and Pro Sembo were really sort of innovators in this field. Of course, you all know the design, built, and implanted the world's first thoracic stent graft, which absolutely revolutionized thoracic disease and dissection disease treatment in 1992. He helped elevate the concept of multi-specialty meetings, and there's a meeting called VIVA. It's held every year in Vegas that Dr. Dake really, with a group of multi-specialty physicians, elevated to be a highly respected scientific meeting that is sort of co-run by cardiologists and vascular surgeons and IR. So it's very, very important, I guess, to keep the vascular care, moving forward as a group effort. He was very important in that. He's led many clinical key trials, and the one that was finishing up while I was here at UVA was the Cook-Gilbert. One of my favorite stories about Dr. Dake is he and his wife Barbara had 3 daughters, Ellery, Anna Jane, and Emma, and 1 son, Ben. And he told me once at dinner that he plans a mystery trip for his kids when they were young. And literally, he would show up and say, "We're going to some faraway place." And everyone just had to pack and go. And this was a holiday tradition they did. It's just astounding, of course, that he could pull this off and get the kids all there. He must have been very well organized. So I just thought that was the cutest thing ever. And here's a picture of his wife, Barb, and daughter, Emma, and Emma's wedding. Of course, what we most want to talk about, he was chairman here from 2005 to 2008. He did a major renovation of the department, so you can thank him for reclaiming a lot of space that was underutilized or not perfectly utilized. And in the same footprint, basically got us 5,500 square feet. He led renovations that provided new clinical physician space and reading room space. One downside is, yes, that long hallway you have to walk down every day. That was kind of a question of the answer. You did not think when you walk down that hallway and have to wait for the cleaning cart for 5 minutes. Of course, he was very involved in the development of Snyder, which is so important to our radiology mission. And Dr. Stone, recounted to me yesterday that really Dr. Dake was instrumental in ensuring radiology had a home in the Snyder building. He found the space for the MR scanners. He found the money for the MR scanners, and really has shaped the radiology research since that time. He developed key partnerships with industry that advanced our clinical imaging as well. And of course, to me, very important that he did a lot to, I think, improve the energy level and the gatherings that he did for social, well-being. I think really helped the department come together. And I thought it was very, very important that the techs and the nurses and the residents and the physicians were having gatherings and sporting events. And one big trip I remember going to see the Washington Nationals one year, all of age, because of Dr. Dake's energy. So. He's always had a passion for collaborative research. Again, Ian and Miller and Semba wrote about the placement of stent grafts in the thoracic aorta. First did case in 92, published in 94. He and Semba wrote about probability theory and venous occlusive disease, which absolutely is a standard treatment. Wrote the first series of acute dissection treatment and published that in the New England Journal in 99. And again, as I mentioned, wrote the 5-year results of the Silver PTX trial. It was an absolutely essential tool in treating peripheral vascular disease. Was one of the authors and leaders in the BEST trial, which is a randomized trial of bypass versus endovascular treatment for peripheral vascular disease. He has over 420 peer-reviewed manuscripts. His H index, for those that are familiar, is 108. The researchers may know that's pretty astronomical, right? So I think more than 40 is considered like a senior, really active publisher, and he's been cited over 46,000 times. Has over 100 book chapters and 2 books. He has a drive for innovation, and I just love that Dr. Dake actually wrote this article. I won't read the whole thing, but in 1991, I asked Juan Perotti and Tim Tudor to come to Stanford and participate in an informal and symposium on the new field of stent grafting. And I won't read the whole thing, but here he is, just really new in the field, gets these innovative guys to come to Stanford, they come up with this concept and start building these stents right there, sterilize them, and then implanting them a short time later. So just an incredible time to think back on. Since that time, he has over 70 patents, and they aren't just in stent grafts, although a lot of innovation has continued since that time, but all sorts of patents about drug delivery and pharmacology and many other fields. And 22 benches. So outside the Stanford Biomedical Innovations building, in 2012, they did an installation by an artist, Susan Schwarzenberg, which commemorates the 22 greatest medical innovators at Stanford. And Mike Dake has a bench there. And that's that picture in the bottom right. Nobel laureate Arlen Kornberg, dual laureate Linus Pauling also have benches there, just to put this in perspective. He's had numerous awards. I couldn't list them all. I insisted I keep this short, but I'll just put the ones close to my heart, which is his 2014. Of course, he's most famous as a lecturer, and that's because he's highly creative, effective, and entertaining. He has been invited all over the world for specialties of interventional radiology, diagnostic radiology, vascular surgery, thoracic surgery. Just an amazing resume of invited presentations. He's done over 22 named lectures. So these are, more formal presentations. Of course, he did the Charles Segmeyer lecture here. Did the Charles lecture at ICET, the Goddard lecture at SR in 2007, the Roy Greenberg Distinguished Lecture at SVS in 2019. Did a TED Talk on immunotherapy in 2024, and of course here today, Matsumoto Endowed. Mike is definitely the best person to go to the winery or a museum with, because he knows everything there is to know about both these things. And always a pleasure. And these just a few pictures, but everyone, we go to an annual meeting and have a few minutes, and you can go to a museum with Mike. It's probably the highlight of your trip. A few of his leadership accomplishments: went to Jackson High School, elected first-class marshal in class 73 at Harvard. Again, we talked about section chief at Stanford, chairman at UVA. After a few more years back at Stanford as professor in the cardiothoracic surgery department, medical director of the cath labs, he became the senior VP for Arizona Health System in 2018 to 25. Many accomplishments there. 4 worth mentioning: designed and built their health sciences innovation building, which has massive art installations, as well as a Wolfgang Puck restaurant. Initiated a public art program across campus. Collaborated between the University of Arizona and Western Australia to make a dual medical degree program. He was an SR president 2020, and he's in finishing up the Center for Advanced Molecular and Immunologic Therapies, or CAMI, in Phoenix. Just some of the things he's done there. And this is a picture from that innovation building in Tucson that he helped make sure it was a space people enjoyed going to. Lastly, he's always been so collegial and a good friend to us all, and so supportive of UVA through all these years. Here's a picture from our SR meeting in Austin, Texas in 2019. That's our gala last year. And we're just so grateful to have him here and be so supportive of all of us, and always has time to have a casual conversation. So, Dr. Dake, thank you very much for being here.
Well, Fritz, I was just telling Fritz he has a second calling. This is he's telling me stuff I didn't even know. Okay, let me just get set up for a second.
Yeah, every day.
This is, oh, I know what there we go. I'm set. Good. Well, looking at the clock and I'm feeling a little pressure, so I'll get going here.
How feels to read?
Well, it's truly a pleasure and honor to be back in Charlottesville with you today. And so many faces. Wow, we got people in the back standing up. I remember when I used to stand up. That's incredible. It's just, I'm appreciative and humbled by the invitation to deliver the inaugural Matsumoto Lecture. For this privilege, I want to thank Alan and Julie. I also would like to express my gratitude for the organizational support to Jordan Webb and other members of the department who have helped. But here's why we're really here. This will be the first event as part of the Matsumoto Endowed Lecture Series, supported by the Alan and Julie Matsumoto Endowment to advance the missions and science of radiology. As you were told, this was created in 2024. The Endowment Honors Professor and former Department Chief, Alan Matsumoto, Professor Julie Matsumoto, for more than 3 decades of service to UVA Radiology. This resulting lecture series is one of many efforts to support the endowment's mission, which is to advance innovation, clinical programs, and education within diagnostic radiology, interventional radiology, and the imaging sciences. As you're aware, Julie and Alan are talented, dedicated members of the UVA community and devoted champions of radiology who are admired and respected by peers and colleagues for their academic and philanthropic contributions, not only to the UVA family, but to national radiological organizations. They're truly exceptional, visionary leaders, and their resolute commitment to improving educational opportunities for all is clearly an example to trainees of what a successful career in academic medicine looks like. And to many of us, they are personifications of role models that we are well worth following. Well, undoubtedly in this regard, I would have to say that their most impressive accomplishments are their daughters, Mallory and Monica, who are both skilled and brilliant scholars who are pursuing academic careers. Over the years, 25 years or so, I've developed a close friendship with Alan and Julie, getting together at specialty meetings or tagging along to various wine regions in pursuit of one of Alan's passions. These times are always very special. Whether it's reunion at a foreign museum or teaming up when UVA won the national championship, these are some of my most enjoyable life experiences, and I'm always looking forward to the next one. Our shared history and the closeness of our relationship makes this tribute to their distinguished service and leadership all the more meaningful. Now, as I was preparing this presentation, actually, my wife saw this and said, "Is that Alan?" I said, "No, that's not." It was looking not unlike a Bad Bunny halftime show. It was interesting, but it was a little jumbled and incomprehensible. But I finally settled on an outline. It still remains a smorgasbord, a potpourri, a veritable dog's breakfast, hopefully something for everyone. We'll start with a few thoughts on healthcare in the US, its current state. We'll look at the future of medical education, discuss potential benefits of AI in science, medicine, and finally, we're going to explore opportunities to address and have an impact on the effects of climate change on human health. Americans now spend more on healthcare than they do on groceries and housing. A little over 10% of every American's paycheck now goes to healthcare. Deductibles are now on an average of $1,900 per person for employer-based healthcare. Healthcare is the #1 worry of Americans. Now, this graph demonstrates the dominance of healthcare in the American workforce since about 2010. Indeed, healthcare has become the lifeblood of the labor market. It's not really unique to the US. Most developed and industrialized countries have the same demographic: UK, Canada, Australia, Germany. But perhaps to show it in starker relief, and I kind of like this slide, these state maps indicate that the largest employer by job sector really shows that the current preeminence of healthcare in the employment market started back in 1990. So on the left, you see the top employer in each state in 1990, and there's not a single state that has healthcare as the top employer. Fast forward 2024, almost every state, except Virginia, is healthcare is the top employer. That's pretty impressive. Well, what else is changing in healthcare landscape? Let's look at some themes for the next 50 years. Demographics are going to swell the patient population. The question of how to take care of 10 billion people is increasingly looming. You're all well aware of the tsunami of chronic diseases that affects our population. In fact, it's overwhelming it. And because of this, I think we're going to see an increasing emphasis on restoration of function instead of just palliating disease. Personalized medicine replaces population medicine. This is in part due to the recognition that if you're on either end of the bell curve, population medicine may not work for you. Material science ascends, and along with physical chemistry, but immunology and AI hold the key to the future. Cost containment dominates, and consumer-driven healthcare increases. Well, I'm a device guy, and so I'd like to take a second to look at themes looking at from a device perspective. Whoops, there we go. Well, the medical device field is shifting, design products for efficiency, simplicity, and total cost reduction. And we're going to witness an increasing focus on tools for global to geospecific markets. This is basically because we have to have an eye towards extreme affordability. What do I mean by that? I mean, the $100 laparoscope, the $30 balloon catheter, the $40 stent. This is going to be really something that's going to be an emphasis around the world. And the markets to open up healthcare for all and health access for all, we're going to have to do something along these lines. But it's important to remember that innovation is expanding beyond devices into platforms, data, and system solutions. It's important to also understand that decision-making is moving away from traditional customers. And finally, those who control data, insights, and care pathways, whether it's payers, hospital administrators, the government, will shape utilization, while procedure-focused players, we're really at risk of being sidelined. Well, as alluded to earlier, one of the most desirable and challenging goals for the future is to achieve healthcare access for all. This is a clinic. It's in extreme Northwest Dominican Republic. I've taken a couple of visits there. It opens twice a year. I joined the mission twice for a week, and the pent-up for medical demand or for medical care is astounding, especially of all things for eyes and teeth. But I went there, and it just became clear to me after my last visit that this was clearly not sufficient. It wasn't sustainable in the 21st century. And we had to think of something better, because when we weren't there, the clinic door was locked for the rest of the year. So whether it's in Latin America or Africa, as in this approach, that has to be a better approach. This is a clinic in South Africa that I also visited. It's created by repurposing portable containers, as you can see. It's staffed by local healthcare workers. It provides daily service to the province. This is the next step. It's beyond medical missionaries, which is has served its time, but I think we have to get beyond that. And it's truly an effective model of self-sufficiency. So where do we go from here? Well, and how do we scale this? I did my medical training at Baylor in Texas, and when I was at the VA hospital, I acquired through conversations with patients, a lot of sort of pithy aphorisms and witty colloquialisms and all sorts of, interesting sayings, one of which was, if all you ever do is all you've ever done, then all you'll ever get is all you ever got. And that's pretty true. And so in this regard to what we're focused on now, it's clearly innovate or die. Well, what does that mean? How do we deal with that? Well, I always draw this little thing, which is things that matter overlap with things that you control. This is what you should focus on. There's a correlative of this that I show my kids. It actually has 3 bullets. It says things you're good at, things you like doing, things someone will pay you to do. That's what I said. Go there. So here's one attempt that we made at Arizona a couple of years ago, and see what you think. So we did this network, to be honest, only about, as you saw, there's not coverage in certain parts, but that's a small part of the population. But if you're out there in the middle of hiking or something and something happens, you have acute abdominal pain, or you have some orthopedic trauma or something, you're kind of in a bad way. So we set this thing up through T-Mobile so that everyone in the state could participate in having, at least access. But inevitably, the future is going to present challenges, problems. Some of them monumental. This bridge in Baltimore, we all remember that. And oftentimes it's imposed by others. And we may fail at some of these challenges, and others we may just get entirely wrong. One recent topic that's concerning and currently undergoing a pitched public debate due to federal and state governmental influence is a reexamination of the childhood vaccine schedule. You're all familiar with that, so I won't go into it. In many areas, this thinking is championed by local officials, such as the Surgeon General in Florida. I'll just read his little quote here about the vaccine mandates. Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. Who am I as a government or anyone else, as a man standing here now, to tell you what you should put in your body? Now, this is real time happening, what's going around. And I think that in the rest of the world, they have a different view. This was just released last week by the African CDC, which said nearly 20 million measles-related deaths have been averted across Africa since 2000 by increasing vaccine coverage. Let's look at measles in the US. I just updated this the other day. You can see in 2023, 63 cases, in 2024, a little more. Then as things got relaxed and rolled back, 2025, and now we're up to 1,748 as of last week. And it's a problem. The UN has a target rate for MMR vaccinations of 95% if you could categorize yourself as being in measles elimination state. In Britain, where vaccination is not mandated, they have a vaccination rate of 84%, and they lost in January their measles elimination status. The US is currently now at 92%. So we're in danger of losing our elimination status in the near future. And as you're aware, this isn't the only topic that's raising eyebrows. Obviously, you know, this is sort of an unabridged, I should say abridged, medley of some of the other new realities we're experiencing. There's something new every day that kind of, I guess you'd say, seems inconceivable. We all remember this. Princess Bride, soft-spoken mercenary Inigo Montoya Ventures. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. And this is sort of how I feel whenever some people come to me and they say, it's inconceivable. This is my same reaction as to observe these Vicini saying, this is, you know, how can you do this? This is our current reality. I was running, sort of hustling through the London airport yesterday afternoon, late in the day, and they had this rack of free daily newspapers trying to do. They had the New York Times, so I grabbed it as I was running, got on the plane. Every one of these things that we are talking about today was covered. So I thought, you know, when I was putting that outline together, I was thinking, is this really relevant to people, or is it just kind of pointless? I mean, you know, is it just abstract, or does it just have any meaning? And every single thing we talked about, this is only a 14-page curated of the most interesting articles put in. And here's when your child dies of measles. And this is a report by a woman whose child died in Britain of measles. And let's go on here. Future of medical education. Again, this is what's in the back page of that newspaper from yesterday. The search for cures in the kitchen. Prescribing vegetables, crafting meals, medical schools look at it as food as a tool. I'll just read the first paragraph. Laura Estes, a third-year student at Tufts University School of Medicine in Massachusetts, believes knowing how to make chicken stew will help her become a better doctor. Well, I hope so, but there's a lot of other things you have to learn about too. And I'm not sure that's going to do it all. Beyond these PR hype distractions, there truly are a lot more important trends to consider. Many at the conversion of precision health, digital health, big data. Digital conversion is going to challenge all of us, learners and educators alike, to embrace new patterns of learning. Fortunately, there are a lot of organizations that have been studying the future of medical education. There are many publications that give us some guides of how the new technologies may impact and influence medical training. This is kind of my own personal sort of thoughts on what the 21st century curricular emphasis should be. I believe we're going to have to need to master these as we train the next generation. It's going to be important for us to emphasize knowledge capture and curation, teaching students to distinguish between information and knowledge, stressing knowledge capture and curation and not information retention. We will need to impart a deep understanding of probabilistic reasoning, understanding probabilities and communicating and applying them meaningfully. It's going to be critical to stress the importance of collaboration with and management of AI applications. And finally, we can never lose sight of the values of empathy and compassion as our trainees move forward in their careers. So what can we do to make sure we are responding to 21st century educational challenges? I believe it is important to critically determine if our educational institutions are currently training students to be maximally effective 21st century practitioners. We need to determine why and how our curriculum should be different from any other schools. We must commit to self-examining and reimagining every aspect of education and training, and through that process, identify strategies to overcome institutional inertia. Finally, we must not lose sight of our need to ensure that the cultivation of compassion permeates every aspect of the curriculum. Because as one of my colleagues at the University of Arizona puts it, you may know Noam Chomsky, he's a linguist. If you're teaching today what you were 5 years ago, either the field is dead or you are. Well, without this commitment, we will likely be victim of a looming digital divide. What do I mean? Well, for all of us, understanding data structure and application to improve decisions and outcomes is going to become a critical competency. We will undoubtedly face major skill gaps and predicted personnel shortages. A key element for the future success will be the training of a new cadre of data scientists, both medical and non-medical, and institutions lacking adequate computational infrastructure, critical mass, data analytics will suffer cognitive starvation and relegation to competitive irrelevance. Well, it's clearly evident that AI and machine learning is central to this digital future and the disruption of healthcare as we know it. So we need to spend some time examining its potential. As Fritz mentioned, I have 4 kids. 2 of them are married, and amongst them, I have 3 in the nuclear family that are involved in AI. And recently, I've been obsessed with the question of what AI is and isn't doing for scientific discovery. Obviously, this is something we hear a lot about from the heads of leaders of these big AI companies, Sam Altman at OpenAI, Dario Amodei at Anthropic, and Demis Hassabis at Google DeepMind, who incidentally won the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for protein structure prediction. They've all been saying things in recent months about how close they believe we are to solving complex scientific problems, curing diseases, and fixing the planet with all these new AI actuals that they're developing. And some of that's obviously hype, and some of it has the markings, trappings of hype, but there's actually a lot going on with AI and science, much of which I don't really feel personally qualified to evaluate. So let's look now at what we may encounter in medical imaging. What are the specific potential benefits AI will enable? Let's start first with disease detection. Whether it's using the tried and true chest radiograph or more recent advanced imaging techniques, there's a whole new journal, as you're aware of, that's devoted to how AI can facilitate practice and improve efficiencies. Risk prediction. Following on the heels of detection is the important function of prediction of disease progression. Many groups have published work using CT data and AI models to generate patient risk profiles, such as these reports focused on lung cancer risk. And of course, now we have one of the first FDA-approved AI platforms, Clarity, which is to be deployed nationwide and applied to breast cancer prediction. This is clearly here now. And then the final thing that I think AI will allow us to do is treatment guidance and selection. We can divide this category into basic support, some of which we're already realizing, and advanced with potential future benefits. An example of basic AI-enabled support aid is a tool tested by the MGH and designed to reduce unnecessary biopsies of benign breast lesions based on breast ultrasound imaging. Based on the initial results, this reduction could avoid needless biopsies in as many as 60% of cases. This was presented at RSNA last year. But let's move on to big disruptive opportunities. I mean, really big, what AI is meant to do with the potential to revolutionize medicine. And this is what my crystal ball says. It's very idiosyncratic, and this is just my thoughts on what it may do. You know, when our immune system works well, it preserves tissue integrity and maintains homeostasis. And when it does not, inflammation, loss of tissue function, and disease arises. To date, studies of human immunology typically have focused on a single disease or tissue, which has impeded transformative understanding and progress. With AI and machine learning, we'll be able to integrate insights across diseases and tissues, empowering identification of shared pathways, regulatory nodes, and therapeutic strategies. This is an example of this slide presents pulmonary on the left, cardiac and hepatic tissue affected by the same pathogenic process, fibrosis. AI will help determine common mechanisms of fibrosis across a range of organs and tissues and facilitate new understandings of disease initiation and progression that will encourage new applications and approaches to therapy. Our immune systems are unique in that they natively use genetic and protein engineering to adapt to pathogenic threats and ensure our health. They do this by stochastically modifying the structure of their constituents, antibodies, and T-cell receptors. And the application of AI and ML-based approaches will enable us to go farther, to rationally engineer immune responses themselves towards faster and more effective responses to pathogens that are not constrained by our natural immune repertoires. Precision medicine. Over the past 2 decades, scientists have discovered that the etiologies of many of what are considered a single disease differ in different patients. These diseases have grim prognoses when it's treated as a one-size-fits-all, but many may be curable when the treatment fits the individual. This has been the promise of precision medicine, a promise that's initially derived for a deep conviction and our ability to decipher disease through genetics. Medical instrumentation. This is the last one. We have an opportunity to develop next generation of medical instruments where AI and ML is fundamentally incorporated into the design of the instrument, in contrast to the current approach where inference is separated from data acquisition. Such an approach would result in high-performance instruments that will lower the cost and decrease the time to develop new diagnostics. Well, how will this play out? Well, we go back to our little Venn diagram. And in radiology, I found this interesting. This is from Italy, and they make the point that healthcare makes up 4 to 10% of overall CO2 emissions. But medical imaging makes up 10% of all healthcare CO2 emissions. MRI consumes the most energy, so anything that would decrease scanning time without compromising diagnostic accuracy is a key strategy for reducing a radiology department's carbon footprint. So what they did is they did these AI-informed MR sequences to reduce examination time through the resulting energy savings and associated CO2 emissions, which is a great segue to the last topic we want to cover, which is climate change and health. Well, I won't go through all this, but obviously, over the last 2 years, we've had a profound rollback of many projects aimed at defining and addressing global climate change. The government under President Trump has opposed many worldwide initiatives to rein in global warming, first opposing the findings of a multinational environmental report describing the dire state of the planet, and then withdrawing from a United Nations Global Climate Treaty, and finally exiting our country from the Paris Accord, the world's main climate pact. At home, it supported the revoking of the endangerment finding, which, as you know, has the effect of erasing limits on greenhouse gases from cars, power plants, and industries that generate planet-warming pollution. The net effect is this repudiates scientific findings that climate change endangers human health and the environment. Now, I want to go back a step, and I'm watching the time, I'm sorry. Second, and see how I got interested in climate change as a radiologist, or sustainability, which is slightly more PC. As a springboard to a discussion of how we might be able to do things we could do to mitigate the effects of global warming on human health. This is looking out my window in Tucson. School starts in Tucson in August, and it's wicked hot. So unbearable that at afternoon recess, when the temperature is over 110 degrees, it's like a little line threshold, the fire department arrives on the street next to the playground and hoses down the students. You can see it. I watch this every afternoon. I found this pretty alarming, really. I mean, as a routine and unfathomable. I couldn't get it out of my mind. It seemed so very surreal. But about this time, I was invited to join a meeting between faculty and members of the University of Arizona and the French researchers, CNRS, on an agenda focused on 3 global challenges. Habitability, which basically meant in their minds, how do you live on Mars, which is totally out of my food, energy, water solutions, the future of human health. We met in Paris, CNRS headquarters. CNRS, as you may know, is the Centre National de Recherche Scientifique, established in 1939. It's France's largest public resource organization employing 32,000 staff, annual budget of over 4 billion euros, second in the world only to the Chinese Academy of Science. Boasts 12 Nobel laureates and 10 Fields Medal awardees. Here's the group outside the meeting room at the Hotel Antier, which is on the CNRS campus. Now, here's a brief aside. I'm going to take a couple seconds. The site of this meeting represented an interesting shared history for all of us. 1783, the Treaty of Paris ended the American Revolutionary War. It was negotiated by Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, John Jay. In 1784, Adams, later become the second president, moved his family, including his son, John Quincy, soon to become the sixth president, into this Hotel Antier as American ambassador to France. During the 1780s, the emissaries, they had a lot to do, and diplomats were frequent visitors. Franklin, the Marquis de Lafayette, and Thomas Jefferson were regulars here. And as you're aware, Jefferson defeated Adams after Adams' first term to become the third president in 1792. So this is my required TJ plug, which is a pretty hard for any dog. And so we sort of self-selected into one of those three main topics in a workshop setting with representatives from both organizations. I was dispatched to the group charged with the future of human health. I was the only American in a room of French faculty researchers. What should we focus on? Nobody spoke. Feeling somewhat timid, but kind of unnerved by the silence, I said, well, how about climate change and health? Every college and a university has some intersection with climate change, but in the end, if a climate change issue is not a health issue, who cares? Silence. Both. Crickets. And then with no better suggestion, we adopted this as our challenge. And soon crowdsourced and input this, generated this flip chart detailing the myriad effects of climate change on health. As you can see, some refinement was clearly necessary. This flip chart was almost unreadable. So I went home with the mantra, every climate change issue is ultimately a health issue. Otherwise, think about it, who cares? And I read, and by the end of the year, I produced a primer, more for me than anyone else, as an idiosyncratic way to organize my thoughts on the subject. Well, one of the aspects of global climate that I kept running into with some fascination was water. The sea surface temperature on average has increased just over 1 degree Fahrenheit across the globe compared to the average between 1970 and 2000. Depending on where you measure, maybe the figure could be a little higher, but typically the scale is on the order of a degree or two. How can such a small number cause such an enormous, devastating change on our planet? It's because temperature doesn't tell the story. It's not about temperature, or it doesn't tell the whole story. The overwhelming story about climate change is about heat, okay? This is our kitchen back in California, and that's Massimo, our dog. While the terms seem very similar, heat and temperature are obviously very different things. Think about heating an oven to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Now think about boiling a gallon of water on the stovetop. At 212 degrees, you could stick your hand in the oven, reach in without immediate injury. But if you put your hand in the water, it would instantly scald you. One is just uncomfortable. The other may result in a trip to the hospital. The reason is the water in the pot holds a lot more heat energy. The air in the oven than the air in the oven does. It has a high specific heat capacity. Think of it like this. Heat, a form of energy, is what causes temperatures to change. And it takes more energy to raise the temperature in water in the pot than it does to raise the temperature of air in the oven. So how much heat have the oceans taken on through climate change? 2022 study found that the oceans have absorbed 14 zettajoules of heat in just 1 year between 2020 and 2021. Is that a what? What's a zetta, you know? How much energy is that? Well, 1 single joule is enough energy to power a 1-watt light bulb, like a very small LED, for 1 second. To boil 1 gallon of water requires approximately 1.25 million joules. Now let's see how many joules the oceans have absorbed in that 1 year. Zetta is a prefix meaning sextillion. That's the number 1 followed by 21 zeros. It's hard to fathom 14 zettajoules, but consider this. All the human energy consumption in a single year, all the electricity we use, transportation, manufacturing, all put together is about half a zettajoule. Imagine 7 atomic bombs detonating every second of every day for a year. That's equal to the amount combined that would equal 14 zetajoules. That much energy could boil away 2.3 billion Olympic swimming pools. And remember, that's just the amount of heat absorbed by the ocean in 1 year. Data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shows that oceans have absorbed 372 zetajoules since 1955. That's enough energy to boil away more than 60 billion Olympic swimming pools. What does that mean for us? Well, it means that the oceans are taking the heat for human-caused climate change. More than 90% of climate change heat ends up in the ocean. Researchers believe heat is the key metric that they use to tell us what's happening to our planet. And excess heat in the ocean has a powerful impact on weather. That's because 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water. As air moves over the ocean, it picks up excess heat and moisture, deposits from over the land in the form of higher humidity, hotter weather, more powerful storms with heavier rains, and more frequent resultant floods, like here in Nigeria, or Fiji, or the Philippines, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Cambodia, India, and not just outside the US, this is Eastern Kentucky. And with all this comes hurricanes with the intensity, which are increased by the intensity of heat over warm ocean waters and affect cities like, this is Houston. In some areas, the excess ocean heat even causes sustained droughts, like in Somalia, or Chad, or Kenya. Through the recent weeks, we've acquired some familiarity with the map of Iran. And if you look in northwest Iran, there's a lake called Lake Urmia. Lake Urmia is the largest lake in the Middle East, the 6th largest saltwater lake on Earth, 2,300 square miles. It's now reduced by 95%. That's a picture of Lake Urmia. And one of these events can certainly promote another. We're in Peru, prolonged drought. And obviously, if it rains with that type of surface and ground, you end up with floods. A UN report concluded that the balance that keeps our planet stable is out of whack, with the planet likened to a heated room with the windows closed. If we stopped carbon emissions today, the oceans would continue to warm for decades. So let's go back to the kitchen. Once the oven heat was turned off, it took 7 minutes and 40 seconds for the temperature in the air to return from 212 degrees to room temperature where we started. However, it took 2 hours and 55 minutes for the pot of water to return to ambient temperature. That's 24 times slower. Even in the best case scenario, the oceans would hang on to this heat for centuries, if not millennia. That's why it's important not to wait to intervene. The slowness of the ocean's response actually means we need to act now so that we avoid more warming in the future. So back to work and what we think we can do. When you try to get a handle on climate change and what you could do to have an impact or meaningful sort of influence as an individual, you soon discover that you feel like you're, in fact, confronting the notion of boiling the ocean. It's so complex. What could you possibly do that would have any impact? So it takes organization, focus, but it's still daunting and seems impossible to know where to start. I started by calling for a meeting in Washington, D.C. a year after our initial meeting in Paris, two-day strategic workshop with representatives of CNRS. The aim was to establish specific research programs to focus on collaboration. And 3 priority research areas were climate change and pollution, climate change and food security, and PFAS, or forever chemicals, and assessment and solutions. And this is the group that met in Washington. These just details 3 examples of joint projects that were initiated after that meeting to address questions within the priority research areas. But in addition to these projects in collaboration with CRNS, we initiated some exclusively homegrown projects. And I put out a general call across campus, not just in health sciences, for proposals, and then enlisting faculty coalition of the interested and the willing, we embarked to work on the most relevant ideas. I'm going to share a couple of with them in closing. The core hypothesis of the first project is that human activity and geographical and meteorological conditions combine to create a dangerous recipe for unprecedented types and levels of ambient pollution. The project focuses on the development of new sensing capabilities and capacities and AI-assisted data logging, analysis, and modeling. In fact, we know a whole lot more about air pollution than we do water pollution, by over a factor of 10. In Arizona, the water quality in a few select rivers and streams is assessed twice a year, no more. So the quality of water that's used on irrigation of vegetables, for livestock, et cetera, is basically unknown at a given time. The overall goal was to develop an array-based, real-time, multiplex sensing platform for assessing water quality. And in Arizona, this really focuses on lead, uranium, cadmium, arsenic, perchlorate, and PFAS, because this is what the local regional danger is to groundwater and the potential effects on crops, livestock, and humans. So we had members of the College of Optical Science and the College of Engineering joined with us to develop both a molecular imprinted polymer and an ion imprinted polymer specifically focused on the project. The molecular imprinted polymer and the ion imprinted polymer work synergistically in their ability to accurately detect large target pollutants, and together they created a sensing platform that was well suited to portability and use in the field to provide real-time data via a wireless network. And we used non-imprinted polymers as controls so we could confirm that the superior retention of target analytes on the molecular imprinted and ion imprinted polymers was due to specific imprinting and not non-specific binding. And this sensor is now undergoing field testing. Project 2. With the global population projected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050, there's intense pressure on food sources. Yet those resources are threatened by climate change. Urban expansion consumes fertile land, aggressive farming accelerates environmental damage, and climate shifts imperil crop yields and nutritional quality, all while heightening water scarcity. And as affluence increases, preferences towards resource-heavy foods, especially meat, exerts even more pressure. Navigating potentially devastating food security challenges during rapid climate change requires innovative and sustainable and highly nutritious food productivity practices that employ precision agriculture and precision nutrition enabled by AI to redesign global food systems in the face of climate change. According to a Lancet commission, by 2050, the world is expected to face a global syndemic, that means multiple things, of malnutrition and climate change, with food production needing to increase by 60% to feed an estimated 10 billion people. And protein deficiency remains the major concern, especially in developing countries where access to animal-based protein is limited. So the vision was to address food security and nutrition using alternative microbial protein and essential fatty acid sources. Spirulina presents a sustainable option due to its high protein, essential fatty acid content, rapid growth, and minimal resource needs. Well, what is spirulina? Well, you may have heard of it by other names, cyanobacteria or blue-green algae, it's more commonly. And our specific aims were to develop a low-cost, sustainable bioreactor for spirulina production, to perform rigorous nutritional analysis of the spirulina, and to form strategic partnerships to drive innovation in spirulina-based food, agricultural, and therapeutic products. And for every one of these projects, I made the teams. They were all interdisciplinary. I made them create a detailed development plan. This is an example of one, which projected deliverable milestones. In addition, we negotiated budgets and timelines, and this was the development plan for this project. Well, to scale up production beyond small batches, we had to develop these bioreactors. And members of the School of Nutritional Sciences and Wellnesses joined faculty from the School of Agriculture and Biosystems Engineering to partner with health sciences. We developed these bioreactors composed of low-density polyethylene liners supported by a cylindrical wire mesh, and they included simple airlift circulators to enhance growth. And we installed all of these on the top floor of one of the parking garages on campus, which wasn't terribly popular, but we sort of did it under the cover of darkness. In addition to spirulina, we grew red and green euglena, which is a superb source of fatty acids. Briefly, these pie charts simply show that the macronutrient composition of what we were growing had relatively high protein content of both sources. I mean, for spirulina, 84% protein. But not wanting to reinvent the wheel, we then decided to take advantage of valuable historical knowledge and experience of other cultures and formed a spirulina coalition between these organizations in Mexico, I won't go into, and the University of Arizona, because Mexico has a very long, ancient history of lessons accumulated from years of successfully growing and processing spirulina in native Mexican habitat. You may have visited Mexico City and may have heard about Lake Texcoco, which is really where they still are doing this, and they really taught us a lot. And we then worked to develop flavorful as well as nutritious foods that involved collaborative contributions by food chemists and clinical scientists working together from the consortium. But we finally became apparent that to move this into the field, and we wanted to do clinical trials in the field, we needed power for these circulating pumps, which just lifted up very simple pumps. So we developed solar photovoltaic panels were installed on the tops of the bioreactors. And this is just a cartoon of what we envisioned for an array of bioreactors installed in the field. And so on we went to clinical trials in Sierra Leone and Malawi. And those trials are undergoing work now. Finally, I'm going to put you out of your misery. Climate change has been recognized as a force that will dramatically reshape the world we live in. Shifts in traditional weather patterns already in process are increasing variability in duration, intensity, and frequency of precipitation, raising temperatures, causing high heat events, and flash droughts. Together, these changes are altering growing seasons, plant productivity, and arable lands, stress on surface water and pest pressures. Now, with climate science, a new focus has begun. One that's emerging is centered on the increased aridity predicted in future climate scenarios. And this is the background for this final project. Climate-proofing crops by improving plant phenotypes. So think of this as sort of the plant's microbiome, if you will. One of the fundamental mistakes with agriculture in our time, or my time, has been our desire to reshape natural environments to support crops we grow, rather than grow crops that fit in the local environment. And this bending of nature to our will has created significant environmental problems that we're now facing today, including nitrogen pollution, soil erosion, unnatural insect and weed pressure, and excess use of water. These challenges, combined with the effects of increased aridity, threaten the sustainable production of nutritious calories. Teaming up with evolutionary biologists from the School of Plant Sciences and researchers at the Center of Agrosystems, we chose to study the highly adapted ancient Sonoran tepary bean plant. Why? Well, the tepary bean is high in protein and calcium. It has a low glycemic index and soluble fiber. Those are both helpful in controlling diabetes and cholesterol. And our intent is to optimize growth and production, as well as the resilience and nutrition of these plants while they receive no water or minimal water. What is this phenotype? Plants harbor an immense amount of microbial diversity. In the past decade, researchers have uncovered the beneficial roles that the plant microbiome can play in enhancing its host, including nutrient mobilization, disease suppression, and stress tolerance. These are some of the microbiomes in tepary bean roots. You can see here from the seeds, from the roots, we went through a process and eventually applied these bacteria by painting them on seeds, and then went to our test farm up in Maricopa County, where this is Betsy Arnold and Duke Pauly. We planted these seeds, the inoculated seeds, and I'll go quickly. Here we are hand planting the inoculated seeds, and then we did early measurements of these seeds, and it's hot as hell there. And you can see there's no water. So here's what we measured: seedling height, seedling condition, leaf number, leaf area, biomass, root length, the whole shebang. There's the treated on the left, the control on the right, and 91% of the variation in seedling traits could be treatment of the seeds by, I won't go into what the other bios is. So here we are in end of June, and you can see they look like they're very happy. End of July, these things are growing like weeds, so to speak. And then that's our 2025 season. There's our harvest. And one of the things that's interesting about this is the bacterial seed inoculations resulted in lasting seeds to the root microbiome. More nutritious than pinto and kidney beans, these temporary beans afforded an added benefit of allowing for 2 crop harvests a season instead of just one with normal beans. And it's just I'll stick with 81% of the variation measured trace could be attributed to the microbial seed treatment. And let's go skip by that. So what you're saying here, as you look at this, is, okay, Mike, so what in the world do you know about this? I mean, you're a poser. You're posing. You don't know anything about this. Yeah, but I had the money to invest. That was the key. That's why it worked out. And basically, when you think about it, I doubt that any of us would be where we are today if we had said no to things that we didn't know how to do. And I've sort of practiced this over my entire career. When you're in doubt, be quiet and act as if you know what you're doing. That's kind of work. Because if not you, who? And if not now, when? So we're at the end. The sun is setting on our presentation, our time together. I want to share a final experience. This is one of 2 functioning drive-in movie theaters remaining in Oregon. It's just across the Washington border from Walla Walla. And Alan and I showed up there for some late night entertainment. Of wine tasting. Alan, you can see, with a $300 bottle of Venetti Merlot and buttered popcorn. Both together. Thoroughly enjoyed that summer evening in our rental car. So in conclusion, we're in a period of great innovation. Opportunities will continue to grow with technological advances that promise to impact clinical practice and transform medicine. Pace of change is rapid. Thinking outside the box is essential. The potential impacts on medical care are enormous. And finally, remember to have fun as you prepare for these inevitable developments. Thank you very much.
No, it's all good. Dr. Dake, thank you so much. I think that lecture confirms the descriptors that people gave. You're an innovator, you're joyful, you're a polymath, definitely a lot of things, and the sky's the limit. So thank you for being here. I know that it means so much to all. And this is just to commemorate the occasion and a small meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you,
afternoon.
everyone.